You're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. I'm Bill McIntyre here with Jon Gallo, bringing you news stories about Long Island and about Long Islanders. And we'd like to welcome you to another edition of this week's Long Island News. I'm Bill McIntyre here with Jon Gallo. And today, our special guest, who we've spoken to on a couple of occasions, we've had great conversations with Nassau County Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm well. How are you all doing today?
We're doing good.
We're hanging in.
Yep. Happy to have you on. Another year.
Hanging in is a word that is used more than often in 2020.
I know, right? I know.
Hanging in or hanging on, whichever one.
Yeah.
Still moving forward, though, so we can be appreciative of that, I guess. So we know you're.
I still feel a little bit like a hermit, because I'm trying to stay home. And
well, the station is starting to open up, though. We see, Bill. So sooner or later, maybe we'll be able to have a nice in studio, reconvening.
It'll be good for me that I can relearn how to socially interact with people, because I think I've totally forgotten everyting.
Well, for the record, I didn't get to stay home and hermit. So
right.
Oh, yeah.
I could use a couple of weeks rest right about now.
I bet. Especially after all that extra shoveling.
Sure.
All right, so let's get into it. Like we like to usually do, let's try to start close to home. We know we spoke with you a few months ago, and you gave us an update about the progress of the NCPD Academy, which is right on the campus or right off the campus here. So can you just let us know again, in the last few months, where do we stand? Do we still see us on the right timeline and hitting projections?
Yeah, so the builder's done an outstanding job to deal with both the COVID, the winter, the storms, and everything. He hasn't lost any time on it, even though some of the issues about ordering materials, because other places were shut down, the sheetrock factories,
Yep.
So they've done very well. We're on schedule to get this opened up somewhere around mid-May. It's about a 92% done as of today. It couldn't come at a better time. You're building this very 90,000 square foot training facility. You're in the middle of police reform, and you're building it on the very diverse community college. We've partnered up with Dr. Williams over at the college. We're going to bring courses back and forth with each other through the criminal justice department. We're going to bring students on site to show them the workings of the police department. We're going to bring community in. We've already got our PAL programs already set up to run camps during the summer, to bring in kids from our minority communities that can come in, and so we can build better trust. So as a commissioner, not only I'm extremely excited about the fact that I'm going to have the first police academy in the history of this department, but I'm also, because of reform, it's just really like I'm blessed that it's coming at the right time, because I am actually going to bring community in. We're building what's called the tactical village right behind it. It's already in the drawing process. Funding has already been made available. This tactical village is that you're going to bring a cop down a real street, like Main Street in Nassau County.
Okay.
There'll be a church, there'll be a school, there'll be a house, there'll be a house of worship, a train tracks. And this house, when you respond, it's a family that is a Muslim family, and how we should be sensitive to their needs on certain days and shoes off. And when you go to the house of worship, or an Orthodox Jewish family, no electronics on a Saturday, or going down further to dealing with our number one crisis here and around the country is mental health issues these days. So how do we handle that homeless or that mental health issue that's on the platform of the train? We're going to have a train there and a platform, and it'll give our guys hands-on training, and better yet, it's going to bring my community in to volunteer and work with us, that we're also going to continue to build that trust and training back and forth. So it couldn't come at a better time for the police department, but even for the community here in Nassau County.
That's great to hear. We're definitely happy to see a lot of the initiatives that the president of the school has made partnerships with, again, NCPD. We spoke with the Nassau County Comptroller about reports that they're working on together in terms of, efficiency and budget issues. So it's good to see, again, that we know how important the school is, not just to the immediate community, but to the larger county and right there, no more evident than in terms of policing. So we'll get a little bit more into the reform conversation as we go. And let me just ask, though, when would the first class that would actually have access and utilize that facility? Would that be anticipated for this year or next year? Or
we anticipate it this year. Here's what's going on. We got a class of 180 recruits at the old building.
Okay.
We take our recruits at a certain point of their training, and they go out to what's called field training. So they hook up with field training officers. They drive around for 6 weeks. During that transition of 6 weeks, we're going to be moving to the new building. When I get into the new building, they will actually get to graduate in the new building. And sometime in around June 1st, we'll be swearing in our first new class in the new building and actually on site. No longer do we have to borrow and pay a college to use their facilities to swear our cops in or to turn around and have a graduation. We're going to be able to do it all in-house now, which is really nice to do also.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And I know I've drive past the College Point NYPD facility that was built up in the last few years. And I know I hear how beneficial it's been to, again, training and to just kind of being state-of-the-art and kind of on the front end of a lot of these, like you said, training policies and things like that. So that's great. Bill, I know we had some other things we wanted to discuss and some other kind of things that I know you're officers have been helping the county with in terms of storm response. We know we had that big snowstorm recently, and we all know, we're all told, stay off the roads, keep things safe for plows and for PD and the EMS and everyone. But, it doesn't always happen that way. And we know that you guys have to respond to a lot of different car accidents and stuff like that. So you want to just briefly just talk about that process?
Yeah, to give you an idea, and I'll give you simple numbers. Our calls for service, normally in that time period, we'd run about 600 calls for service in that 24-hour period. We doubled it. We had 1,335. So, and that's usually our auto accidents. We had 37 car accidents during that period. We had 257 aided cases. 3 people amputated either fingers, and one was a real serious gash in the leg with snow blowers, right? You don't put your hand near anything that's running, right? And they did that, unfortunately. We also had, very small arrests at the time, but that volume of again, goes up, but we got to also respond at a slower pace. We're not moving as quick because of the snow on the road.
Exactly.
We had to handle calls where the private companies were pushing their snow out to the street. Now, we understand everybody's trying to do what they got to do, but you can't put it there. And so sometimes summonses get issued. So snowstorms are challenging for us. It's really our men and women of the DPW of Nassau County this year and every year do a phenomenal job. They did an outstanding job getting the roads plowed, along with the townships, getting the roads plowed, getting it cleared. That was a lot of snow to come in a very short period.
Oh, yeah.
Especially since we haven't had much snow. So it kind of woke us all up. But the good news, because of COVID, sometimes it works too, is that a lot of people were not going into work anyhow. So they weren't using the trains, they weren't on the roads, and most of the cars were in the driveways when the plows came down the road. So preparation on part of the community is a big help to the DPW and the police department, and knowing to get your cars off the road so that plow doesn't have to go around. Because look, when it goes around, it just buries your car in snow. So,
yeah.
It makes it work for you.
I was going to say exactly that. Last time I had to leave my car out in the front of the street. It took me an hour and a half to dig it out. I said, for the 10 minutes it takes me to put it in the driveway and move the other car up, definitely worth it.
I give you a very short, funny story about that. I park outside the back door here at headquarters and have a spot in the basement, but I don't use it because my custodial staff has to move a lot of things. I said, look, I don't need this. I park outside. But during a snowstorm, I'm going to park downstairs.
Right.
So I pull my car downstairs. The only problem, it's a downward driveway.
Oh, boy.
Now I got to get up that driveway in the snow. Well, guess who had to shovel the driveway?
Oh, yeah. No rookie, I guess.
Yeah, I'll park outside from now on.
There you go. One way to learn.
Well, I hope we don't get any more snow because my muscle in my back is saying you can't shovel anymore. And it wasn't that much, but I live I live on a corner, so I have to do like 2 sidewalks.
It's what it is. But okay, so let's remind our listeners that they are listening to this week's Long Island News, and we are here on 90.3 WHPC, Bill McIntyre and myself, and we're interviewing Patrick Ryder, the Nassau County Police Commissioner. Okay, Bill, I know some other topics were vaccinations. I think maybe we had some questions on.
How about the police force? Where do they stand in being able to get vaccinated?
So it's a volunteer system, so you don't have to take the vaccine. And the same goes with law enforcement, even though we are first responders. We got just about everybody that wanted it is done. We have just about. And then we also have our civilian force, which is about 1,200. They also have to be vaccinated because they're just as important in the day running of the police department. So we're just about getting to that process now. So I would say by next week, we'll have everybody that wanted to be vaccinated.
Okay, right. Now, is it an issue with the membership? Let's just say I don't know if you're in an office situation or whatever. You got 3 out of 10 that don't get vaccinated. Now, do they have to be checked every morning for temperature, or does everybody? How does that work?
Well, the good news is in our civilian entity, which mostly works in those offices, they do get checked. They still have to wear a mask around the building, even if they got the shots, because there are others that didn't. But most of the civilians wanted the shot. The sworn members, a lot of them did not want it. And the reason they didn't want it, look, they're young kids. A lot of them had it already. I had close to 1,000 officers already have the virus. So they had it. They worked through the 2-week period, and they're back to work. Thank God nobody was really sick. We had one early on that was very sick and was in a hospital. I have one right now that's in a hospital. He should be getting out shortly. In his recovery process now. But we've been fortunate that way. We didn't, you saw the New York City fireman that just died.
Yeah.
We also, Suffolk County had an officer, a supervisor that just died last week. So knock on wood, we've been very fortunate that way.
Okay. And I know that's a lot of progress because I think you had reported in the press last month that about, only about maybe a fifth NCPD officers were just getting access about a month ago, and it really was still just in the initial phases. I think when you spoke to someone, I think on was it January 5th, and now, like you said, that's good to see that the majority of people who wanted it are getting it. So we know it's tough for the public, but it's good to see that PD has a little more access.
As you watch the media, young kids are not really that get sick or that exposed to it. As you see, it's at 99.9% of them really get sick. Don't get sick. I mean, so our young cops, I have 60% of my cops have less than 5 years. That means they range between the age of 21 and 27 years of age. So
that makes me feel old.
They're healthy. They might have had it already. And so, and a lot of other people they took let's wait and see what happens. Even though they trust, we're going to wait and see. The virus is good. Everybody's taking it, the vaccine that is. Yep. So, we'll get through it, and we'll see how many people actually end up at the end of the day taking it.
Okay. Like you said, that's important, especially, for their families and other folks to come in contact with. But it's good to hear that update and to see that, again, there has been a lot of progress since I know when it just started the vaccine rollout about a month ago or so that we spoke with the county executive with and other things. So maybe, I guess, now would you like to give us a kind of recap of 2020? I know it was a complicated year for a million reasons that we've discussed already. But in terms of the overall kind of crime reports, those index crimes, those things that, obviously your office is most kind of focused on. What did we see in general in terms of the numbers, I guess?
So you saw around the country a lot of crime skyrocketed up. We had record low crime numbers in 2019.
Yep.
That's what we got. We are the safest county in America.
Yep. U.S. News and World Reports. Yep.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the numbers at the end of the year, we came down another 7.5% in major crime. And my total crime number came down 18%. That's phenomenal. But here's what affects it. First, we had bail reform in the beginning of the year last year. So that until they got it a little better in Albany, it was the revolving door. So that was causing my numbers to fly up. Right now, in 2021, they're starting to come down. As a matter of fact, I'm down 31% as of this morning, which is outstanding. But so that skyrocketed me up. And then came COVID. Residential burglaries went extremely low because everybody was home.
Oh, man.
But commercial burglaries went up. They went up because people sought to take advantage. My biggest crime number is my grand larcenies. That's usually your petty larceny, stealing from a store. That number went drastically down. That's my largest number. It went down so much because of the fact that the stores were closed. We came down 28%. I'm sorry, 19% in grand larcenies. But what did go up was surprising, was stolen cars.
Really?
Everybody's home. They're bored. They got money. They buy a new car. They get into this fob world where there's no more keys.
Yeah.
The fob in the car, and they don't lock it. So bad guys can't go stealing from stores. They're all closed, right? I can't break into houses. Everybody's home. I'll just go around and jiggle door handles.
Yeah, the crimes of opportunity that's talked about.
90% of my stolen cars were because of somebody left the keys in the car. Oh, now we say the fob in the car. Mm-hmm. So they go and they take the fob, they start it, and they're gone. And if they don't get the fob in the car and you leave it unlocked, they're going to steal everything else that's in the car. So that was my biggest crime that we had, total number, in 20. My homicides went up from 9 to 14. 9 was historic lows. 14, we went up 5 additional. That's still low if you look at my 5-year average. So overall, we didn't see the gun violence like everybody else saw. We're a different community out here in Nassau County. We had started a gun suppression team last year. I think last year they took off close to 18 to 20 guns additional to what we normally take off the street. Real good, hardcore crime guns. And this year already they have 13 that they've taken off the street.
Okay, good to hear.
Yeah, so we're getting guns off the street. There are a lot more guns out there. You can't pass a gun store, or you can't pass the front of headquarters. They're lined up every morning in headquarters to get a license, a target permit, or apply for it, and they're lined up in the gun stores buying guns like crazy.
Yeah, we had seen that being reported, especially at the height of the pandemic, and during the summer when there was a pushback both in favor of police reform and pushback against it. Definitely gun stores were one of the few places who were doing really well business-wise, for better or worse. And like you said, I think it's an important thing to remind listeners that, as the commissioner was saying, for those crimes of opportunity, make sure you try to eliminate risks. Make sure you lock your doors, the simple things that really can solve you having a big problem down the line and give more work to your NCPD officers. So I know I'm in a lot of civic associations and those meetings in NYC, and we have these meetings, and the NCOs come, and they always constantly, bemoan that point that just please, put it inside, far away in your bedroom, and if you got a box that can block the signal, kind of like your Easy Pass, use that to store your key fob if you can. But like I said, definitely there's plenty of information in terms of how you can kind of protect yourself from some of those larceny issues.
And to give you the number on stolen cars last year, in 2019, again, a record year in stolen cars, 456. Last year, we went up to 587.
Okay.
That's a big jump.
Yeah, that is.
And I just pulled the application numbers, right? In 2019, we had 2,226 people apply for gun permits. Mm-hmm. In 2020, we had 4,876, 119% increase.
My goodness, yeah.
So does that give you a chill?
Yeah, it's concerning, but look, I'm in the law enforcement business. I have a firearm. I know what my firearm's for and how I use it. But why all of a sudden is everybody so concerned? Are they afraid of this civil, you hear people say, there's a civil war coming. There's no civil war coming. We're a law and order country still. We may not agree, and we probably disagree more than we do agree. But the fact that people want to feel safe and secure, you live in the safest county of its size, but now there's going to be roughly another 5,000 people with firearms in their homes. And a lot of them are buying shotguns, and that's that home protection.
Yeah. Well, there's been talk too about we all have our eyes on the gun sales. What few people are watching is exactly how much ammunition is available for those guns.
Can't get it.
That is beginning to diminish and almost disappear. Which is why I feel that law enforcement and the gun stores are really not concerned with how many guns they sell, because a lot of those people are never going to get a chance to use them, whether they need them or not.
So the police department, we're struggling to get ammunition to train our officers right now. That's
really? Wow.
And we have our inside sources, but it's still very hard to get.
Yeah, and there was a story a long time ago, and it could have been on the conspiracy side, but it was the idea that Army training, when all the shell casings, they used to, spent ammunition, they would come and collect all the shell casings and make new ammunition. And at some point in time, they said, no, they're collecting the shell casings, but they're selling them to somebody else.
Yeah.
So that was done. I'm talking a year, maybe two. That started a while ago.
We collect all our brass, as we call it. We collect all the brass at the range. It goes into 50-gallon drums, and then that gets sold to a company.
Okay.
It does.
Okay. And then to that point, like you were saying, do you think that the issues in terms of the supply chain, is that something that is kind of just across the board from the pandemic, or is that from the demand increase from the kind of consumers, or?
It's a little of both. The demand is there, but it's really pandemic. Look, when we backed up with bodies during the height of COVID, it was because cemeteries couldn't open because their people were sick. The funeral department, they were sick, and now it's the same thing. People couldn't make the sheetrock. They can't make the bullets. And so many times it wasn't an essential job to go and create bullets, but, police still shoot. They have to still train. So, and again, so does the military. So the ammunition, and then again, the homeowner is buying a lot of ammo. Yeah.
Interesting. And then maybe just last thing on that point, do we see with the increase of, again, folks, average residents buying weapons, is there maybe an increased kind of, push for training? And because, again, people have these things, and like you said, NCPD and yourself, you guys take all the training and the precautions to practice, safe management, locking the guns away and all that stuff. Do we know if that's something in gun stores or is just being promoted out there a little bit more, or?
So the gun store is always promoted, right? They'll tell you, hey, go to the Nassau County range. Here, here's the contact number. They tell them about safety and security, with your background check and everything gets done. But most people are buying shotguns, and basically that's a point and shoot, right? Yeah. If somebody's coming through the front door of my house, I'm going to have the ability to point and shoot. If you're buying a handgun, there's a lot more controls understanding that handgun, especially with an automatic and how, when the ejection of the shell casing comes out, and how do you reload that weapon? And, it's got a lot of kick to it. So does a shotgun, but you're probably only pulling that trigger once on a shotgun, and that's the end of that.
Right.
Yeah. The deterrence factor versus, like you said, something that's a little more tactical, or, the whole issue of also carry and all those types of permits. So, okay, that's interesting to hear. And it's good to hear that overall, as opposed to some of the other counties, even the city, that with the pandemic, we did see some anticipated kind of, rises and some maybe anecdotal kind of information. But overall, that's what I had been hearing again, that, pretty much across the board in most places, those larcenies, those other things, people unemployed additionally. We see the need for, food because of food insecurity, all these types of things, homelessness. So it makes sense, unfortunately, because of all these social issues and, these underlying factors of just the opportunity being there, that there might be some additional noise that way. So, okay, go ahead.
Let me just say this. A lot of people don't understand. When there is the pandemic, the police are there. The vaccine, the police are organizing that with Department of Health.
Yep.
When it comes to gun sales and stuff, we got to get the pistol permits. We have to educate them. We have to check to make sure they have the proper safe at home. When it comes to crime fighting, we're there. So there's been no rest for the police, and food drives. Every single food drive had to have my Homeland Security guys at to help with traffic coordination.
Yeah. So
there was no problems keeping the 6 feet. So we've been going 24/7. We always go 24/7, but nonstop. Since last March when this thing started, and it just hasn't ended. And it's been a toll on the police department. I've had a lot of retirements, but people think the cop just goes out and fights crime. We do so much more. So much more.
No, of course. And I know also you've spoken about your role too with OEM, and like you said, dealing with this whole crisis holistically, from every level. It is a lot more than maybe the average person might think at first glance. Let's remind our listeners again that they are listening to this week's Long Island News on 90.3 WHPC, and they are listening to Bill McIntyre and myself interview Patrick Ryder, the Nassau County Police Commissioner. Okay, Bill, I know maybe before we go into some of the other topics that are up there, you want to maybe just stay. I know you had some thoughts also. Maybe I know we're concerned about substance abuse always here on the county, and we focus on the pandemic, but we also don't want to lose track of the epidemic. So I don't know if you want to have any questions about that, or I know you talked about trafficking, domestic violence, but go ahead, Bill.
Well, it would. I mean, it certainly would seem that with the combination of COVID, and then you got a snowstorm, and you get that those things like drug use and would definitely elevate. Although I guess even from the law enforcement side, you may not see the results of that because those people don't necessarily go out.
Right. Unfortunately, that's the one battle we lost. And we spent so much time in Operation Natalie after Natalie Siapa from Seaford. So much work with the parents and everybody and educating and getting into rehab and diversion courts. We saw a 40% increase in fatal deaths last year, 40%. And then we saw another 19% in non-fatal. That's in the overall number. In heroin alone, we saw a 23% increase in fatal, but our non-fatal in heroin went down by 16%. And here's why, at least my theory. People at home, there's alcohol available to you, there's pills available to you. So taking different paths to get to your high or to get you out of your mood, that depression for that day, which they assume to get you out of it. They took a lot of different things. There was more things available to you. You're not on your way to work or you're in the office and you go and you blow a line in the bathroom. They're popping pills, drinking alcohol. So we saw the overall overdoses in this county went up 40% deaths.
Wow.
Tragic.
Yeah. That's terrible, Wendell, because a lot of that stuff is out of sight. So it's hard to really address it as if, the person's working in the office and you say, hey, Todd, you've been okay or something like that. It's hard to really gain that sometimes without those kind of personal relationships being.
Well, and there's also going to be, I'm imagining the eventuality only because of the financial state that the county and Long Island in general finds itself in. Marijuana legalization is going to be a no-brainer, I think, when it gets to, actually be voted on. People will just they'll just see the benefit of the money and and I don't know if that's
sports gambling and that are at least anticipated to probably make more progress than they had in the past because of the need for revenue raising bills as they talk about.
I don't think it can be avoided. Yeah.
I'm a bet man. Both of them get passed when they vote on the budget.
Yeah.
If you're gambling and you can do it, go to Jersey and give Jersey the revenue. It's like, all right, we kind of gave up that fight, and people are gambling on football, they're gambling here,
Super Bowl.
Yeah, Super Bowl's one of the biggest gambling days of the year. So that's going on. Again, when you get into marijuana and you get into to that drug usage, look, it's being done. It's widely being done. It's being done across all races and religions. But how you roll it out, that's my concern. Mm-hmm. And again, they're not. I'm sure the lawmakers are sitting with some experts in that field. But what is their gain by this going forward? My gain is there is none. Even if the financial gets money into the pockets here, what are we going to pay in the substance abuse area? What are we going to pay with deaths on the road that somebody's stoned? And I will tell you this, and I had this conversation this morning with somebody. Uber and car taxis and everything have done a great service for us in this county and across the country because the kids are smarter, whether they're stoned or they're drunk, right? They shouldn't be driving. And they hit that magic app on the phone and there's a car that appears and they go home. And they don't even have to pay the guy because it's already charged to their credit card. Yep. So it's a great tool. SAS made it smartest, but it's also putting the Band-Aid over the fact that you're getting stoned or you're getting drunk too excessive. But it's going to happen. So we're going to deal with it. Well,
I think you make a good point, and I think if that one thing that you said, and you're right, I noticed. I have a daughter who's in her 30s, and when they were coming up in school, the DARE program, which doesn't exist anymore, does it?
No.
People can kick about that, but I saw it, and I saw my own kid know what you just said. Yeah. That if you're going to do these things, you're going to have a designated driver. I have a nephew that would take a train to New York City and hang out with his friends because he didn't have to drive. This was instilled in these kids. It was not instilled in my generation.
They're a lot smarter than we were when it comes to that.
Bingo. Yeah. So I think that, when we go to roll out, it's just like you said before with the bail reform. It was not rolled out well. When it finally gets chiseled down to where it was obviously needed, somebody to just think up that idea, but the same thing, are you going to roll out the marijuana thing? What you just said about not operating heavy machinery, not putting yourself in a position where you're going to be in more danger than you may already be. That has to go hand in hand. Like, just to be able to say to a guy, listen, you don't want any trouble with law enforcement when you're going to go smoke your stuff or do whatever you do. Don't be getting in a car. Don't let us see you.
Right.
That would be the best thing.
And I think
don't let us see.
You're still not allowed to smoke it publicly. You're not allowed to smoke it on the street.
Right.
You go in your house, you smoke it, you do whatever. That's fine. Look, we gave the good fight 2 years ago. We knocked it back down. There's a revenue issue here. Kids are still getting stoned. I will still teach my child to stay away from it, even though it's...
No, that makes sense. And I think families, they have to realize that they'll still have that right, to instill and have their families, believe, whatever they choose to, again, teach their kids in terms of this process. But the main thing is not, kind of head in the sand, like you're saying. It's, really just acknowledging there is a problem. Let's try to see if we can do this in a smart way and avoid more potential complications.
We've already got plenty of substances that are already a problem.
That's fair. And I know one of the big Not that makes it any less. I hear you. But that PD, I know, was talked about a lot too. I think we discussed in the past. Well, one of the things with marijuana, specifically legalization, is that it's harder to really get the, as opposed to BAC, blood alcohol content, the testing, especially, we had these discussions, which really kind of fell to the back burner during the pandemic, but around the vaping and these, E-Valley, I think it was called, and these other issues. So I know that there has been some work done, but it seems like that'll have to probably come along with it in terms of how enforcement can really kind of, use a database system, like they do with DWAI or something like that.
I think that within a capitalist system, the technology will catch up and give law enforcement the tool it needs to know whether or not you're driving legally or illegally.
We still do sobriety field test, whether it's alcohol, and then there's the machine. The machine is the lock. That's the good locks it in for us. The sobriety test doesn't tell me the level, but it does tell me that you're impaired, that you shouldn't be driving. So, and then it may come to once we get to that point, and I don't know what the law is going to say, that we can then take blood or you can refuse to have it, but we can take your blood, and that will give us the honest number of how stoned you are.
Okay. Right. And maybe just last two quick points just before we segue out of this topic. I know, as we mentioned initially, the idea of the opioid crisis, and I know, the need for things like Narcan training and stuff like that. And there is that constant kind of age-old debate on, marijuana, the gateway drug, or I know some advocates have talked about, at least in the point of reform, where, maybe this can be an alternative like alcohol, which again, still alcohol creates plenty of problems in people's lives. But in some ways, it might stop someone, if maybe they drink, a little more wine than they should, or smoke a little more marijuana than they should. It might be better than the alternative of them turning to harder drugs. But just your kind of quick thoughts just on that perspective.
So we see the extreme alcoholic, right? I give an example. Last weekend, there was a homicide. Alcohol was involved. I can't go into the details of it. But most of my aggressive assaults are when somebody drinks to a point where they're uncontrollable. You go out on a Friday night, your limit. I can have 2 or 3 of these drinks, and that's it. That's all I can do. Yeah. Or I can have 6, and I'm just as good as he was because of my size, my weight, my food content in my stomach, how tired I am. All these things factor in. But as a gateway drug, look, alcohol is a gateway drug too, right? You get stoned if somebody has had that addictive personality that's, I'm not good enough. No matter how drunk I get, I'm not good enough. I need to try something else. And, but the problem that scares me, alcohol, you could probably work to get yourself off of it through some counseling. Marijuana, same thing. Heroin, it's deep. Yeah. It's deep. And, they say that's the dragon that grabs you and doesn't let go. And first-time users of heroin have either died or have become full-blown addicts because they said they just couldn't get off. That high was just so powerful to them.
Yeah, the fentanyl problem, too, is obviously a big part of it. Just the last thing there, in terms, I've seen some maybe, resumption of like Narcan trainings and stuff like that. Is that something, I know that the pandemic has, a lot of those in-person things prevented, but is that starting to kind of resume, or can you just talk about that in terms of efforts?
We're doing Narcan. We can do Narcan training virtually. So they've been doing it.
Okay, that's good.
Been doing it. I got to tell you, I hear it I drive from home back and forth. The police radio's on when I'm in the car. Mm-hmm. You're an overdose in progress, and you'll hear the same thing. Narcan administered. They're back. Okay. That person was dying.
Yeah.
I think one year we Narcaned about 870 people in Nassau County.
Oh my God!
Another 1,000 deaths that we would have, and it almost always works, depending on how far into it they are. So, you tell every user out there, look, call us. We're not going to lock you up. We're not going to lock your partner up. If there's a pound of cocaine on the table and you called us, by law, we don't lock you up. It's a Good Samaritan law. So we'll take the drugs. We're not leaving them there. But we're not locking you up. I want to save that person. The only thing that I'm doing by locking you up is prolonging the next inevitable death that's going to happen.
Yep. Creating, a cycle of recidivism and things like that. Like you said, trying to deal with the cause, at its core. Like you said, that's an important point, definitely. So, okay, let's see. We still have more time, and we still have plenty of more to discuss. So let's remind our listeners they are listening to This Week's Long Island News, 90.3 WHPC, here with Bill McIntyre, myself, and NCPD Commissioner Ryder. So, okay. In terms of some of those things we just discussed, maybe can you talk a little bit about the importance of funding? As Bill had alluded to, the issue, not just for police, but for state government, county government, everything in between to the federal level, about the importance of besides, everything what to do with reform, but just in general, money coming from the federal government to the county for all these types of programs, Narcan trainings, restorative justice, drug alternative sentence programs, all that type of stuff. What is your perspective on the need for that you tell congressional reps?
So very rarely do you see a government that says, I'm not broke, right? Government's always broke. It's just a matter how broke they are and willingness to tax the taxpayer more to pull in more money to bring that debt down. Right now, most government around the country, because of COVID, has really hit us hard. The resources and the unrest that we had. Now, I was bringing in close to 250 cops a day on overtime to cover the protest, and thank God in Nassau County, they stayed peaceful to the fact that there was no violence and no looting or any fires or anything of criminal mischief. But I still had the cops there in case it went bad. How are we going to stop that? So we spent a lot of money on COVID, besides those that are out sick, those that are exposed and have to quarantine. I now also have members that are retired and says, I'm done. I did 30 years. I was only hanging around for a little bit longer anyhow. I'm done. I have 180 recruits in the academy. I'm still short another 100. So I have a lot of making up to do about getting my cops in. So there was a lot of expense that was paid for the right reasons. We all agree, right? You're dealing with everybody exercising their First Amendment. It was the summer of the First Amendment, right? And it was, because we ended up with protests on everything under the sun.
Oh, yeah.
But the cost was driven up. Now comes government. What can government do? What can government cut those checks? You got to leave politics out of this. What do I need in Nassau County? What does the taxpayers need? We need money to come in. The county exec who's done an outstanding job, and not because she's my boss, she really has. She's done an outstanding job with trying to handle all these issues that are getting thrown at us. We need money, so the state don't have it. They're broke. So it's a writing a check. When you write the check from the federal government, we all pay for that sooner or later, right? It's either a debt goes up and the value of our dollar goes lower, or we try to find a balance and we increase taxes and so forth. Increasing taxes ain't going to happen in Nassau County, not this year, that's for sure. It's an election year.
No, exactly, not popular.
No, it's never popular, no matter what happens. And so, but every time government puts a new program in place, there's a cost to that. Just a simple thing is that we're going to put cameras on the side of school buses, so you pass school bus. There's a cost. Somebody's got to collect that data. Somebody's got to analyze it. Somebody's got to store it. Somebody's got to then pull it for court purposes. That costs money. Body cameras. We're going to body cameras, not to jump ahead in reforms. We're going to go to body cameras. It costs a lot of money. But if you look at it in a bigger picture, what is that going to save us in litigation? We settle a lot of suits that they call nuisance suits, for the lack of a better term. Is that, look, we probably can win it, but what's it going to cost us to win it to get there? Will we be in the same place we were? So that can be settled. We're in the business in law enforcement, we do get sued a lot. That's just the nature of the business that we're in. We try to mitigate it. Cameras are going to do that for me. When I'm accused of doing something, and the old Warner Wolf, go to the videotape.
Oh, yeah.
We play the videotape, and there it shows, I didn't do that. You're wrong. And that lawsuit now goes away without having to settle anything in between. So you got to look at what the cost. When we went into Operation Natalie, the cost to do that. The police department used forfeiture money that we took from drug dealers. But there's not a full barrel of money sitting somewhere that I can fucking out.
Of course.
That money starts coming down. And we're not seizing as much money because the forfeiture laws change now in the country. So we're not taking as much money. We have to show dollar for dollar. So all these things factor in, and it becomes a bigger cost, and government has to pick up the tab. That means we pick up the tab. And do we want to pick up the tab for a better quality of life? Or do we want to say, we're okay with the status quo, let's just go with what we got?
That is an important point. I think that a lot of this, needs the framing of it being an investment, like you said, dealing with on the front end of the opioid crisis, as opposed to dealing with it down the line and the cost on the healthcare system, which then again goes to taxpayers and all these other types of issues. I know, as I liked it, someone who was saying that people don't have a problem a lot of times with taxes going up if they feel that they're getting a return on their investment. If they feel like what they're paying for gets them, the quality services that is needed. But if you're getting something that's lesser and you're still getting a worse result and paying more, then clearly people have very little interest in, having to fork up any more change. So, okay, that is definitely good to hear your perspective on that, in that kind of broader sense. And then, with the time we have left, let's maybe now try to segue towards the relevant conversation, which is still kind of at the crux, which is reform, but also the NCPD contract conversation, and those kind of being somewhat interrelated and a bit complex. So can you maybe give us your thoughts first on maybe the contract status and updates, and then, we can go from there.
So I'll be careful on the contract because I don't negotiate and I'm not supposed to comment on contract. Okay. So I won't go into detail.
Understood.
I will say this. Contract has nothing to do with reforms. All the reforms that we're being asked about don't have to be negotiated. They're work rules. I set the work rules. The county exec sets the work rules. Mm-hmm. But if we affect their work course of business, I then would have to go into what we call impact bargaining or bargaining about something. I see. But the unions, the SOA and the PBA, until the PBA contract didn't get voted down, that was public knowledge, they had agreed to go with body cameras. Now, they put a number on it. They put the number of $3,000. If you understand labor, you understand that everything has to have a price tag on it to get to the labor. You have to save me this much money if I'm going to give you this much money. That's the way it works. So you're going to give me back time and everything else, and I'm going to turn around. So you put a number on something to get the equalization in the contract. That's the way it works. But when it comes to these reforms, everything that we're talking about, training, education, in the contract, they have payback days that they have to do, extra days. Those extra days, one of them was going to be used for this extra implicit bias, racial bias type training. Mm-hmm. That's great. It was going to cost me nothing because it was going to be one of the paybacks. And if the contract goes that way, it saves me about $1 million if it goes that way because I can now train them. And it saves me in the long run because I'm not getting sued because somebody did something inappropriate or didn't de-escalate a situation as you see going on all around the country.
Exactly.
So the contract side of things, they don't go hand in hand. Everybody, and I get it. I truly understand the activist groups that are out there, but it's just it's about knowledge. It's about understanding the process and that it doesn't want, they don't interact. If I forced body cameras on the union and I said, I'm not negotiating, it would go to impact bargaining. And I would have to give a number if the arbitrator ruled that way. The arbitrator may go and say, no, it's part of your job. It's part of your equipment. You got to wear it. So I leave the contract thing out there. It really, one has nothing to do with the other.
Okay.
And we're making great reforms. In this county.
Yeah, that's good to hear that clarification. And we know that there are other issues involved. People talk about, concerns like any other union with health insurance costs and other things, that would be relevant to a dispute in terms of, making sure that you get the most from your members. That's kind of the way it works. And the same way in terms of the advocate groups where they're trying to push for the most, from their constituency in a sense. So it's good to hear, your perspective on that in that general sense. Okay, go ahead, Bill, and let's talk about maybe reforms too.
I've got a question with. I think we're all aware of it. There's a big deal about white nationalism and
with the implicit bias training
and its effect on everything. Yesterday, I don't know if you saw it, Commissioner Ryder. There was a CBS News report that the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, he ordered a service-wide stand down for 60 days to give military leaders the chance to address extremism in the ranks. He says that the Pentagon was stunned to find that veterans and active duty service members were among those involved in the storming of the U.S. Capitol. Now, after he said that one of the things that the military has not done was to define extremism, to figure out exactly how they would define it. And then he also... He's also the same guy that's going after the sexual assault cases in the military. He's bringing all these things to the forefront. It's something that my question when I read that story, I thought of how is it that the National Guard didn't respond as people were storming the Capitol? It would only take one person in a pretty long chain of command to make that happen. And I think that's what he's talking about. Yeah. We've seen it since the time of slavery. All the laws that became the normal in the South were basically just continuing that same thing. And here we are in 2021, worried again about the same thing. I think this problem has existed for a long time, and I think it still exists today. But I will say that I think that Nassau County's police department is probably the emerald on top of we're not the Wild West. We don't see the things that we've seen around the country and the stories that we read every day from local police departments and, a lot of groups. How do you, I'd like to hear what you think about, that situation and how it affects you.
So, and I'm glad, and thank you for that compliment. And I will say this, and I should have said it earlier. I believe we have a great police department. I believe Nassau County Police Department trains their officers some of the best in the country. I believe we are very inclusive. I believe that we are not, and again, we can't be naive. Do I have a cop out there that may have bias in him? Sure. Do I know who he is? Absolutely not, because he wouldn't work here.
Of course.
That's the difference. And the military, politicians have got to get their head out of the sand and stop playing games. And that's what aggravates me. And you saw all this stuff about what went down in the
Capitol,
Washington. Yeah. You think for 1 minute, somebody that's trained in the military and firearms, that there's not those that are aggressive type people and stuff like that or get involved in these white supremacy groups? Sure, there are. Absolutely. Does that mean the military is bad? No. Does that mean that people are bad? Yes. Does that mean that the Minneapolis Police Department is bad? No, that cop is bad. That cop should go to jail and rot in jail. The 3 officers next to him, they should all go to jail. Not as bad as him because they didn't act. That's just as bad as some people say. But the other thing is their training, they were kind of lost, but they're still going to pay the price. None of them should be cops, that's for sure, and they should go to jail. And people love to politicize a problem. So Nassau County gets painted with the broad brush and says, implicit bias, racist. And look, they take arrest data. How do you have a 5-to-1 ratio on African Americans being arrested in Nassau County over whites? And my answer simply was, it's based on evidence and probable cause. We don't just arrest somebody because of the color of their skin. We never arrest somebody because of the color of their skin. But there's a lot of reasons why. And I use this example. If my kid is leaving the driveway today and he's pulling out and the taillight's broken, whoa, back the car up. Where you going? Going out. The taillight's broken. Yeah, I didn't get it fixed. Well, then you're not driving the car. Take the same example of a kid in Roosevelt. A good kid trying to get to work. He's back in the car. He knows his taillight's broken. He's got to get to work. If he loses his job, he's in a tight situation at home already. No dad is standing on the front porch saying, hey, back the car up. He goes down the street. We pull him over. We give him a ticket, right? It's a violation of the vehicle traffic law. So there's a lot of things that have to be fixed. And I'm not saying we can't do better. We can do better, and we're going to do better. That's part of the reform. And we address a lot of issues in there. But you got to look at education. You got to look at housing. You got to look at family life. You got to look at the economic situation going on and the jobs and so forth. There's a lot of reasons for inequities, as they say.
Yep.
But it's not the police department's fault. Yes, we're the guy that stands between law and order. Yes, we are the people between bad and good, and sometimes good people get caught up. I'm not going to ever deny that. It happens. But at the same time, and sometimes bad people get hired and given guns and shields.
Yeah.
We don't know that until that day that they act out, and then we got to act on it. So we instituted new training. It's going to be a 12-hour training block for all our police officers, our civilians. All of our villages are on board because we believe we do police different here in Nassau. We do have respect for our community, and we're all inclusive of everybody. I could do better in a lot of different areas. We're going to try. We're going to help, and we're going to work together with our reforms to do that. But don't blame everything on the police department, and don't blame everything on the military,
No, exactly. Seeing the underlying causes, of course, like you said, and realizing a lot of times addressing with those other social issues that could lead to these situations, whether it was we see a lot of social media problems and other types of things like that. There's definitely...
bad people do bad things. And when bad things happen, and they got to remember that.
No, I hear you. Sometimes it's that simple, but obviously there are a lot of other complexities. Go ahead, Bill.
I think that part of the perception oftentimes is, and me, I'm just a citizen. I think the responsibility as a citizen, it really has to lie with law enforcement, only because, one, yes, taxpayer money pays the salaries, but we've given each of these individuals a gun and we put them out in the public.
Great power.
Yeah, exactly. And I've heard the the debates about the citizenry can either be taught how they're supposed to act when they're confronted by a police officer. So do we teach all the citizens that, your hands stay 10 and 2 on the wheel, shut your mouth until you're spoken to, don't reach for anything in the car? So we're trying to educate all of the citizens of a county to do what's right when they see a police officer. And the public may feel that, wait a minute, we're footing the bill. Why aren't those guys taught that not every person they come across is an enemy combatant?
Yep.
Yeah, and I know, like you said, you talked about some of the things that that the enforcement, that the PD is doing in Nassau. And we talked about implicit bias training. I know that I read that in Suffolk County, their PD, I guess, had actually consulted specifically in Ferguson. And we're trying to talk about their implicit bias training program, which I know has seemed to gain a lot of traction in its impact and effect. And that's something that you guys are focused on. Have you been in conversations with Suffolk, I imagine, just in terms of the kind of a joint strategy, or how does that work?
So we speak with Suffolk all the time. Jerry Hart and her team out there are also a great police department. I also speak with the NYPD. They got great leadership in the NYPD. They truly do. It's individuals. It's not systems. Individuals are broken. And we got to take the broken individuals and get rid of them. But how do you find them? How do you pull that out? It's complicated in the process. But we are held to a higher standard, and we should. You're giving the authority to take another man's life in certain situations, or woman, in certain situations. You have to respect that authority. You have to respect that person. That person that I stopped is 10 and 2 on the wheel. It would help if I went up and was respectful to that person. Sir, can I see a license? What did I do, officer? Well, the red light back there, you passed the red light. I didn't pass the red light. Well, sir, I did observe you pass the light. There's no reason for me ever to engage in the bad way. I got to stay on my path of politeness and respect, no matter what you say to me.
Yeah, it's always having the moral higher ground. I know that's a thing in terms of enforcement, military, the higher ground, and that type of strategy. that definitely goes in terms of, again, the moral higher ground as well. We don't obviously have much time left here.
It looks like we're running out of time.
But we do have a little more time. Just a quick other touches on some other things related to this conversation. I know that another thing that we have spoken about and that your office prides itself in is in community policing. And I know there's some discussion in terms of part of the plan that, the department had rolled out. And I know that there is discussion in terms of, is it correct that they anticipate a plan being submitted by NCPD by, I believe, February 15th, which would then be discussed further in the legislature before the deadline of, I believe, April 1st for, again, the executive order, I think, which came out of the summer. Is that still accurate reporting?
So the governor comes out with the book in August. Yep. We write the reforms. There's 13 items in his reform. We're up to 23 items. My document is 310 pages long. And it's not that there is a lot of rules, regulations, and policies and procedures that was asked for. We got to be transparent. How do you do use of force? Here it is. So we're an open book right now. Closing on public comment ends today. By the 15th, I have to present that to the legislators next door. They then open it up for a public, additional public comment. And then from there, they vote. If they vote and they pass it, it's got to be in Albany by April 1. If we do not comply with the governor's ask, he has already said he will put a oversight on top of our department, and he will cut off funding to our department. And we talked about funding earlier. We need our money. So we are complying. We have community input. We have bike cops now, new PALs out there, park walk and talks in communities, training that's going on, de-escalation training, new equipment that we're giving out. Everything is working in bringing, like we did the protest, bring it down a notch. Bring it down, take a breath, and let's get through this.
That's good to hear. I know, Bill, you always talk about cooler heads prevailing.
Cooler heads prevail.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yes, Commissioner. We spoke about that last time. I think. And, you know what? I just want to tell you, I loved your answer to my question about the white nationalist thing. You are the guy for this job. There's no doubt in my mind.
Thank you.
Yep.
You have a handle on it. And you know what? We only had an hour. We don't have too many guests on here. I could talk to you for another 3 hours, and I'm sure we could, talk about a lot of issues and a lot of things. But I really do just want to thank you for being as candid as you are and offering us this much time to sit and tell us exactly what's going on. It looks like the clock on the wall is dictating that we got to get out of here. But again, Commissioner, you got to promise me you'll come back and fairly soon. I enjoy our conversations. I love the information we get from you. I couldn't ask for more. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for all your time.
Thank you, guys.
Really appreciate it. Take care. Have a great weekend.
We'll see you soon.
Same. Be well. Thanks again.
COVID.
Oh yeah. No more shoveling too. Hopefully in our future. Take care. Be well.
And to the listening audience, we'll see you next time, same place, right here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. Have a great weekend.